Kauanui said, we were treated as a colony, okay? Let us keep that in mind when our people try and talk about their experiences, everyday experiences living under colonialism. Last night, I gave a book reading for Hawaiian Blood at Native Books Nā Mea, Hawaii, and Noinoi Silva helped organize that event. And she was introducing me, and she acknowledged the first part of the title of the book, and she said, it's Hawaiian Blood. She said, I forget the subtitle, and somebody handed her the book, and she said, colonialism and somebody interrupted her publicly and said, no, it's occupation. And she said, no, it's colonialism and the politics of sovereignty and indigeneity, right? She's talking about my book title, not the person who interrupted's political perspective. And I mention that because what I really want to bring to the table today in terms of this public forum is my absolute insistence. For me, this is a bottom line, this is non-negotiable insistence that we allow ourselves to address our historical experience of settler colonialism within the context of an illegal occupation. Our people have taken some of the knowledge that Keanu has put forth, and it's like a little go, you know, when people say a little goes the long way, this is a little goes the wrong way, right? And I see it on the websites. We were never a colony. It was an illegal annexation. No shit, Sherlock, we've got that. We got that from Noinoi Silva's work before the 1998 100th year marker, right? She brought that research home prior to that actual memorial. We know that. We know about reporting Hawaii to the list of non-self-governing territories, and we can talk about the finer points of whether it's an intentional concealment of the status and the ignorance and the layers of historical disavowal. But let's not be confused. Our kupuna lived under the structural violence of colonialism. And colonialism is not the same as being a colony defined by Black's Law Dictionary. And it's also different from the word colonization with a Z under international law, okay? And the reason that I bring up Palestine and the Israeli occupation is that the Palestinian people aren't confused about this. They absolutely insist on their indigeneity, and they do it in the face of European Jewish settler colonialism under an illegal occupation. They are not confused. They talk about settler colonialism because it's settlements that are destroying them. We have a lot to learn from this struggle, and I was really glad to see the People's Tribunal, Kehaulani mentioned, because that's where I met Maivan in 1993. That's where I met Hanalei Fergestrom in Kona. I met many of you there. But it was Asma Hader, one of the tribunal judges, that brought to me that we talked, and she brought this out. It's documented in the Namaka o Ka'aina video. She said there are similarities between the Palestinian struggle and the plight of the Kanaka Maoli. And I thought, whoa. If she's saying that, and she's a Palestinian refugee who's an attorney from Jordan, who's a human rights expert, who's world famous, I mean, the fact that Kikauka Kekuni Blaisdell was able to help, bring her here to be a judge, to help adjudicate our case, is incredible, right? We had such an esteemed panel, including, as you mentioned earlier, Kamoana Nui Akiwa Jackson. But Asma Hader brought that home. And later, we saw Bumpy Kanahele bring in Francis Boyle, who talked about the Palestinian case and the Hawaiian case, right? And Francis Boyle has written a book called Palestine, Palestinians, and International Law, and it's all about belligerent occupation and, the illegality of violating. Now, I want to acknowledge that one of the things that's important that I've learned from your work, Keanu, is that insistence that Hawaii had an independent state. And I absolutely acknowledge that. So when I talk about the experiences of colonialism, I'm talking about the poverty, I'm talking about the diabetes, I'm talking about the racism, I'm talking about the prison industrial complex and the astronomical rates of the incarceration of our men and women who are being shipped to the South. They're in Mississippi, they're in Tennessee, they're in Texas, my uncle's in Arizona. They are scattered all over. They're being removed and their ohana cannot visit them, right? I'm talking about the homelessness, I'm talking about the snuffing out of our language, I'm talking about the desecration of sacred sites. If Naue isn't a perfect example of 21st century colonialism, I don't know what is. But to say colonialism on the Hawaiian independence list or the Hui Pu, all of a sudden I'm sort of like brainwashed. Also, I think I'm an American Indian. And it's like, no, 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 no. I study colonialism, I teach colonialism. Saying indoctrination instead of colonialism doesn't cut it. And that's what people have said. It's not colonialism, it's indoctrination. That's interesting, because indoctrination is a religious concept, and I feel like I'm like trying to pull away from a cult mentality. Because some of this occupation discourse, to me, has morphed into a form of fundamentalism. And it reminds me of born-again Christianity. Now, e kalamai, I'm not here to bash Christianity at all, but we know that Christendom, which is different from the belief system of Christians, is the domination, right? Christendom. And I think that what I really am invested in is cracking open the confines and the way that our Kanaka indigeneity has been strangled just very recently in the last few years, where all of a sudden it's not okay to say that we're Kanaka because all of a sudden we're being accused of being like having racial preferences. And then the first thing people do, it's formulaic, you know it's coming. Our kingdom was colorblind. Well, that's interesting. I want to actually talk about racism. It's the neoconservatives and the Republicans that want to talk about colorblind ideology. They don't want to talk about the laundry list of colonialism that I just laid out. So, yes, I know that we had other subjects. People say they were citizens. They were kingdom subjects, and I know that they went beyond Oiwi Maoli or Kanaka Oiwi. I get that. But I also am alarmed at the way that there's been a silencing of looking at the suffering of our people who are suffering because they are indigenous. The other heirs to the kingdom did not experience the same policies that were set out to obliterate our people culturally throughout the 1900s, right? And arguably, we can even talk about forms of American colonialism prior to the overthrow. And if we look at the missionaries who came in 1820, I mean, I'm living in the belly of the beast. I live 10 minutes from the Lyman orchards, the same Lymans that colonized Hilo, right? Another quick story, there was a Lyman elder who brought me his business card at the book reading last night. And he had tried to ask questions, and Noi said, she's not taking questions. She said what she wanted to say. She read an excerpt for the book. If you want to go talk to her, stand in line and introduce yourself. And he threw me, he didn't hand it to me, he threw on the table a card with his name. He is a Lyman. And he said, he wrote on there, free food anytime she wants it, with his signature, because they're his relations. I said, I live 10 minutes from Lyman Orchards. This is a food place where you can go pick apples. I mean, this is New England, right? And this is where the colonizers came from, right? This is where they came from. They came from New Haven, Connecticut. I live 30 minutes from New Haven. They came from Boston, Massachusetts. I live 2 hours from Boston. I'm living in the belly of the beast. And just to remind you, a lot of our 19th century Hawaiian historical records and 20th century, they're all up in New England. So we want to break open the archive like we talked about in the first panel. Come see me and let's go holo holo and I'll take you to these archives because our stuff is up there as well. It's not just here, right? It's at Harvard. It's at Yale, it's at the Torrington Historical Society, it's at the Litchfield Historical Society, it's in all these little New England colonial towns, right? But my point is that the missionaries brought with them a project of civilizing us and Christianizing us because they saw Hawaiians as barbaric,